It's Wednesday, August 26th, 2020. Welcome to your Daily Detroit. I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Sven Gustafson. Today's show comes to you in three parts. First up is a coronavirus update, and it's a hefty one. We've got a lot to go over there.
Heidi Cron from Clearcover, a digital auto insurance company, joins us to talk about their new Detroit office where they're hiring more than 300 people.
Then there are new developments in a case where social media site Nextdoor is being sued over postings in Bloomfield Township. The Birmingham Bloomfield Eagles' Tiffany Ashaki has more. Let's just jump right into it, shall we?
The state of Michigan is quickly approaching 100,000 coronavirus cases, and the total stands at just over 99,200. That's after 761 cases were added Wednesday. 7 additional fatalities takes that pandemic death total to 6,424. Michigan's viral transmission rate continues to increase at 1.08. We're now one spot away from being one of the top 10 spreading states again. Although there was a slight increase in 7-day cases per 100,000 people in Oakland County, it continues to hold mostly steady with Wayne County as yellow or community spread areas. Macomb County continues to have accelerated spread, according to the Harvard Global Health Institute.
Meanwhile, staying with Macomb County, there is a Mask Up Macomb initiative. That's also a hashtag. And as part of that, the county, along with the Anton Art Center and Henry Ford Hospitals, is holding a mask poster design contest to encourage the wearing of masks. There are a number of prizes for categories in the under and over 18 categories. The winner gets $500, and the poster will be distributed across Macomb County. In order to enter, you must be a resident of Macomb County. Submissions are open now and due by midnight, September 16th. We'll put a link with the full rules to theartcenter.org on Daily Detroit.
In a move that has shocked medical experts, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has changed its testing recommendations to say that some people who don't have symptoms but have been in close contact with someone known to have the virus do not need to be tested. That's a change from its previous guidance for people with known or suspected exposure. Reports suggest this change was a result of pressure from the Trump administration. Many speakers at this week's Republican National Convention have sought to congratulate the president on his handling of the pandemic and have spoken about the pandemic in the past tense, seemingly implying that it's over. Trump has also said that more testing simply leads to the detection of more cases, and he contends that that artificially inflates the confirmed COVID-19 cases. I would be clear here to say that the vast majority of doctors do not agree with Donald Trump.
Yeah, and this is coming, as there are still widespread reports across the country of, backlogs in testing and the availability of tests and contact tracing and all that stuff. You mentioned that, all these speakers at the Republican National Conventions, including Larry Kudlow, the president's top economic advisor, he, spoke about the COVID pandemic in past tense, on a day when there were something like 1,500 new deaths, as if we were somehow past all this. I don't understand. I mean, this at a time when the CDC, by its own numbers, has, reported that there have been 5.7 million confirmed cases across the country. Most recently, in the most recent 24 hours, there were 37,000 new daily cases reported, and that we're nearing 178,000 deaths from COVID-19. And, I'd point out, too, that there are a lot of different organizations that are tracking coronavirus across the country who think the agency is actually already underreporting cases.
The challenge that's starting to happen is you're seeing this political influence on what should be health organizations, and you're seeing this with new treatments that come out. Just the other day, there was a press briefing around a miracle new treatment. Turns out to be convalescent plasma, something we've known about for a very long time.
Which is plasma from people who have been infected and survived.
Correct. And it's not, and to be clear, it's not a vaccine or anything like that. It's only for people who are actively and having quite a hard time fighting the virus. So I feel like this was a situation where it seems like the virus is starting to get swept under the rug. That's kind of the idea. And then states and municipalities are left to fend for themselves around a strategy and what's happening here. And I can't help but think at some point this is going to bite us pretty darn hard, just because if you just don't report the cases, that doesn't mean the cases aren't there.
No, of course not. I mean, it's really frightening. It feels like we are charting a course through a pandemic and we're completely rudderless. It's frightening. I mean, I read that Donald Trump has basically staked his reelection, by promising that we're going to have a vaccine by the end of the year, which is a pretty bold and possibly foolhardy statement to make, given what we know about how long it typically takes to develop a reliable vaccine that works.
Well, to close this out, I do want to share the new recommendations verbatim so that people understand them, as they are from the CDC. If you have been in close contact within 6 feet of a person with a COVID-19 infection for at least 15 minutes but do not have symptoms, you do not necessarily need a test unless you are a vulnerable individual or your healthcare provider or state or local health officials recommend that you take one.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
Meanwhile, a group of Michigan businesses is bankrolling a new public awareness campaign called Rona for Real. It targets young residents about the dangers of the coronavirus at a time when the state is seeing an uptick in cases among people under the age of 30. The multi-million-dollar campaign features a sunglasses-wearing cartoon virus character named Rona. It includes a Rona4real.com website. That's Rona numeral 4real.com. Billboards, advertisements, and merchandise, which is sort of amazing, but here we are.
I'm not sure what that means, Sven, but I'm very interested. I wonder if it's going to go into this that kind of twisted collectibles kind of way.
The whole thing's being funded by the likes of DTE Energy Foundation, General Motors, Meyer, TCF Bank, the Quicken Loans Community Fund, and a whole bunch of other organizations.
I mean, awareness is always a good thing.
Yeah.
And finally, you may remember that we talked about that Memorial Drive on August 31st. The city of Detroit is looking for 400 volunteers for the memorial event. They should sign up at bit.ly/Detroit Memorial Volunteer. I will have a link in the show notes to that, as well as to the email of volunteer coordinator Brianna Sullivan. So there was some really interesting business news that hit our inboxes this week, and I wanted to dive into it a little bit. You know, a topic that we cover often on this show is insurance, and we also cover new jobs and things happening in the city. So I think it's the perfect intersection of both of these things. So joining me virtually is Heidi Cron. She heads up customer experience for Clearcover, which is an app that has to do with auto insurance. Heidi, first, welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremiah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's set the table. I will, of course, share my own ignorance in that I was not familiar with what Clearcover is. It looks very app-focused, which I think is kind of important here in 2020.
Absolutely. We are the smarter car insurance company. And as you noted, we leverage technology to create efficiencies that make car insurance more user-friendly and cheaper for customers.
Well, that's definitely something of interest to Detroiters, as, Detroit and Michigan pay among the highest car insurance in the nation.
I know. As a former Michigander, I have some PTSD around my insurance costs.
Well, and to be clear, a lot of it, there are parts of it that are mandated. There are plenty of episodes in our back catalog talking about the things about that. So that makes me think, so why Detroit and why Michigan for this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we aren't selling insurance in Michigan yet, but we hope to soon. When we considered looking for a second location to really build out our customer experience operations and other parts of our operations as well, but especially customer experience, we started with a national search and we looked all over the country. And as a former Michigander who spent most of her career in the Ann Arbor tech startup ecosystem, I also spent time on the coast and, of course, have been in Chicago for the last few years. I knew that Detroit needed to be on this list because the talent in Michigan is really, really special from what I've seen so far in my career. And so we put Michigan on the list, and we worked with a search firm, CBRE, and we analyzed all sorts of data. We put job postings out to kind of test the different markets that we were interested in, narrowed it down to a few Midwest cities. And we were absolutely most impressed by the talent that applied from Detroit. It was really remarkable. Lots of the skill sets that we were looking for were just incredibly prevalent on all of the job applications that we received. But we also did a site visit right before the pandemic hit in Michigan. And I have to say, the most remarkable thing about Detroit when we were there was the people above and beyond their skill sets, the sense of community and the hustle and the collaboration. In so many ways, we just felt that Detroiters embody our core values that we try to live into every single day as a company, some of which are like embrace being the underdog and empower each other. And so it just kind of felt like Detroit people might be our people. And we would be so honored to have those folks help us grow to the next level.
There has been that kind of influx as of late in the city and in the region to tap into talent that, I've said this before, and people may not know this, but I actually used to work in staffing and recruitment years ago. And one of the things about that is Detroit is such an engine of potential that just does not get tapped into by enough companies. And if you're willing to do the work, there's so much great talent here. And there are so many people that need to get to work and have lots of important skills that are valuable to companies.
Absolutely. And we're just honored that so many are interested in helping us. We think it's going to be an amazing partnership.
So talk a little bit about what exactly is happening here in the Motor City. In terms of your footprint, your presence, what is this going to look like? And I will, of course, put an asterisk on this for listeners in case you didn't know. I mean, you should by now, but we are in the middle of a pandemic, so things are going to be a little bit flexible.
Yes, exactly. So initially, our thought was we're going to look for office space. But of course, like I said, we went to Detroit right before the pandemic hit really hard in Michigan. We literally went into quarantine the next day. So that kind of blew up our ideas of developing an office. That said, we hope to do that someday. What our goals are now is to hire Michiganders with a preference for Detroiters. We've committed to prioritizing the people of Detroit for these roles. And for now, those folks will all work remotely. And we will just continually evaluate when it is safe to come to work again and consider, does it make sense for us to go back into an office together?
Yeah, I think that's going to be something that will impact investments going forward, not just with your company, but in general. I mean, there's so many ideas on what could happen, and we don't really know what will. Why don't we talk about these roles? If you're looking to hire folks, what kind of folks are you looking to hire as far as skill sets, roles that you need to fill here in Detroit? Also, how can people get into those roles?
All of the roles in my department, the customer experience department, going forward will be hired in Detroit, which is just so exciting. The bulk of those roles will start as customer advocate roles. And what those are effectively technical support roles. So we look for a specific set of skills. We look for great communication skills, because that's what you're doing, is communicating with customers and communicating back to more technical people and trying to translate back and forth. And we just need people who are expert at that. We need people who are very empathetic and can take on what the customer is experiencing and understand it and empathize enough to really want to drive toward the underlying solution, not just get a customer off the phone. We're not a call center in that way. And then the other is resilience. We need people who can handle the fast pace of a startup, who can talk to multiple customers, hear what kinds of issues they might be facing, and jumping back in and keep going. And so those are the top three that we look for. And then beyond that, we're looking for technical aptitude and product knowledge and ability to learn. We can teach how to use an app, right? We can teach all of that. In fact, then what we do is we hire customer advocates and license them as licensed insurance agents. So they'll learn a lot of things in this role and then just grow from there. Over time, these roles will become increasingly technical support roles and working very closely with our product and engineering teams to solve the root of our customers' needs.
And if people want to take a look at what's available, get involved, what can they do?
Go to clearcover.com/careers. You'll see customer experience roles posted there, as well as roles posted in other departments. I would say this, most of our leaders are very open to having Detroiters apply for those roles as well. And maybe all of them. I just haven't talked to all of them. But in general, we as a company, we're just looking for people wherever we find them. And so if you see other roles on there that maybe aren't in Detroit but are up your alley and you're qualified for, please go ahead and apply because we would love to consider you.
Well, Heidi Cron from Clearcover, thank you so much for spending some time with us today and telling us, what's happening with this expansion. It's exciting news.
Thanks so much, Jeremiah. I look forward to hearing from some of your listeners through the application process.
Joining me on the line is Tiffany Ashaki from the Birmingham Bloomfield Eagle. We're going to update you on a story that we told you about a while ago about a suit against residents in Nextdoor, and it's in Bloomfield Township. Tiffany, welcome back to Daily Detroit.
Thanks. How you doing?
Excellent. All right, to set the table in case someone didn't listen to this segment previously, earlier this summer, Bloomfield Township Supervisor Leo Savoy and Treasurer Brian Keeps, they filed a lawsuit against the social media site Nextdoor. And that's really interesting because people have been having a lot of debates around social media sites, usually around Facebook or Twitter, but Nextdoor has become such an engine of local discussion as of late, and this could be a precedent-setting suit. They sued Nextdoor and two residents, claiming that they'd utilized the platform to, quote, bully and spread political misinformation. Tiffany, what is the latest?
So the suit against Nextdoor is not resolved, although I'm hearing rumors that we are coming up on a resolution on that too. But Judge Daniel O'Brien from 48th District Court in Oakland County has recently ruled that the two residents in the case have been dismissed from that case. The whole suit was filed at the beginning of May, and the motion to dismiss those residents was filed way back at the end of June. It was announced August 5th that those two residents would be dismissed from the suit so they can kind of move on with their lives and also safely talk about their experiences with the suit and with the plaintiffs if they so want to. And I'm sure you'll notice August 5th, that's an interesting date because that falls right after the local primary election where the plaintiffs were involved in trying to keep their seat.
And did they?
The township treasurer who was involved, one of the plaintiffs, he did. He's running unopposed to keep his seat as treasurer, but Leo Savoy, the current township treasurer, he's not going to be able to run as the incumbent. Dan Devine is the former treasurer of Bloomfield Township. He was voted out of office several years ago, not without much pomp and circumstance. He was censured for some interesting developments. He and Leo Savoy have never been great friends. There's been political arguments all along the way. He lost his bid for re-election. He kind of stepped out of the limelight, and now he's coming back in, and he ran for supervisor against Leo, and he won as the Republican candidate to run against the Democratic candidate in November.
Wow. So Savoy got primary. Do you think this had anything to do with that outcome?
Oh, 100%. You know, the people who criticize Savoy, they are very vocal, and the people who criticize Dan Devine, they're very vocal. It's just a matter of, I hate to say it, high school politics that people just never grow out of. And they're fired up on both sides, and they have good points on both sides. And to be quite honest, the vote wasn't even close. And you can talk to either candidate, and they'll explain to you why they won or why they lost. But at the end of the day, it really wasn't a substantially close vote. So I don't know if Mr. Savoy is looking to stage a write-in campaign or if he's looking to pursue politics in any other way. I think his family is a little relieved, to be honest, at the moment that he's taking a step back, because this political game in the township, it got messy and it got mean. So I think they're kind of relieved at the moment. I think he's relieved at the moment, but you never know.
Well, and one of the things about this is that it was likened by one of the lawyers, this lawsuit, to being a slap suit or a strategic lawsuit against public participation. It was alleged it was a suit that tried to keep residents from being vocal and sharing their opinions about things. What have you kind of seen about that?
Well, I've talked to Mr. Savoy a few times about that, and he insists over and over that's not the case. He says if it was a slap lawsuit, then he would have had sued 100 people, because there were at least 100 people who were critical of him on Nextdoor. And to calm the critics, he would have just tried to silence all of them. He says that's not the case. He just tried to pick the really egregious examples of people who were not only spreading mistruths, but spreading mistruths that were especially harmful, that not only put people in danger, say, who were saying that there's no one in City Hall available to help residents during the COVID-19 crisis, which could potentially put some residents at risk if they needed township services. But there's also the possibility that there could be fewer township services available for police and fire. He argued if the special assessment district wasn't passed last year because of false information that was spread to voters.
Well, and that assessment district, that is a mouthful always, isn't it, Tiffany?
Always. So we'll refer to it as the SAD, because we always refer to it as the SAD here on out.
Well, apparently people did not vote for the SAD because that plan would have raised revenue for basically public safety efforts. And that's one of the challenges that I have seen in a number of suburbs. One of the reasons I'm interested in covering this is that across the region, you have a number of legacy suburbs that have been around for a while now, where their costs are starting to increase. One of the reasons that some people left the city or move out to outer suburbs is the lower taxes. But eventually, the costs of those people and the cost of the benefits of taking care of those public service workers, those mount up. And eventually, you've either got to raise taxes or cut services.
Well, that's exactly it. And that's what the battle was, is there was a state law that took effect in 2017 that said you need to fund OPEB obligations, which are other post-employment benefits. So, healthcare and things like that, but, retirement pensions, things like that are promised to employees. You need to fund those at 40% instead of just pay as you go. So that means you're increasing your costs annually quite a bit. And for the township, that created a $5 to $7 million annual deficit that needed to be filled. So it's not necessarily that they were saying, look, we're going to take this directly from police and fire, but they had to take it from somewhere. So if you have a general fund, $5 to $7 million come from that general fund, you're scratching $5 to $7 million across the board. And yes, some police and fire personnel positions are probably going to get hit too. And they did. They took a lot of things. They took a lot of events that the township has annually, like their Dream Cruise party. They temporarily closed down their own animal shelter. They temporarily closed down their road division.
Wow.
They did make the cuts.
Those are some pretty deep cuts. I mean, the events are one thing, but closing those other two things, that seems like the kind of thing that, I think about, and I fully admit, as a city of Detroit resident, we do pay more in taxes, but there's also a lot of things that, frankly, we get. I mean, our roads in general are pretty nice, those kinds of things. It's all a trade-off, but it seems like those are some pretty, if you're taking out roads and animals.
Well, opponents of this SAD were saying, you're just trying to scare us into bringing in more revenue. You can cut some of our luxuries as opposed to just asking us to pay more to pay for the basics. Now, depending on who you ask, are some of the wages of city employees really necessary? Well, the city employees would argue, yes, if you want to retain some of the best talent in the Metro Detroit region, it's absolutely necessary, because they could go to comparable municipalities and get something that's better, get better health care, get better salaries, get better pensions, which, pensions are just unheard of anymore, especially in police and fire.
That goes to a larger conversation that happens in Michigan. I think about before the pandemic, the debate about fixing the roads. And I'm not saying one side or the other, but the fact of the matter is that there tends to be this belief, and it's not really based in fact, if you look at a number of audits, that there's some kind of money somewhere to just, do things in Michigan. This isn't limited to Bloomfield Township or any specific suburb. There is a culture in this state that, well, the money's somewhere. We just got to take it out from somewhere. And then people sometimes get surprised when there are major cuts that end up happening to pay for things.
That's exactly right.
So what's next?
I hear rumors that the Nextdoor end of the lawsuit could be resolved as early as the first week of September. So we will find out what happens then. If it is, that to me does not say that it's going to go to a jury trial, which means I don't think there would be any kind of case law that would be changed that would affect social media and how it's handled as far as people and what they say on their message boards. It would continue the way it is. Maybe there would be some kind of a settlement. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes, though. We'll have to revisit this.
And it is very interesting to me because, Nextdoor has just had a meteoric rise in the last few years. And especially during this pandemic, you got a bunch of people who are all near each other, but they really can't talk to each other very much. And so that digital communication really increases. And there's been a lot of national stories about Nextdoor as well.
The more I'm hearing about it, the more I'm hearing that people are having a really hard time differentiating what's true from what's rumor, because at this point it's just conjecture on those boards. It's just people talking. It truly is the town square. But Twitter and Facebook, they've really jumped in to kind of eliminate some of the falsehoods, some of the pages that are spreading untruths, and there's none of that on Nextdoor. It's just people at kitchen tables chatting, and it's growing aggressively. That's the best way I can say it, is people are getting very aggressive.
Well, it's something we are definitely going to watch. Tiffany Ashaki, the Birmingham Bloomfield Eagle, that is a C&G newspaper. Thank you so much for your time today, and I'm sure we'll talk again.
Yes, definitely. Thanks so much.
And that'll do it for today's show. As always, thank you so much for listening. If you want to help support the work we do here and help keep pushing Detroit's conversation forward, you can become a member at patreon.com/dailydetroit. It's a great way to be in the know and get stickers and other cool swag. Also, don't forget our new voicemail. If you have a comment about the show, noticed we got something wrong, or just have a suggestion, call us at 313-789-3211. You can also send us an email at dailydetroit@gmail.com. With that, I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, take care of each other, and we will get through this together.